We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Vallotton. BraveCo men, welcome back to the BraveCo podcast. I have a really interesting guest this week, and you guys are going to find that out. His name's Topher, and I guess I should refer to you as King Topher.
I mean, you can just.
Do I have to call you King?
No. You got to bow and kiss the ring. Actually, no. You can just call me Topher.
But you have such a interesting story, and I know that not because I've dove into it a bunch, but actually intentionally I didn't want to do a ton of research. So I've been a little bit onto the Instagram page just to hear some of your stuff. So I'm familiar with it. But there's always something that happens when I hear your story for the first time. Yeah. Right. I get you get the real reaction from me. And what I do know about you is that you are a DJ in the Christian world, but you've traveled a lot in the non-Christian world. So you're signed to a record label with Taylor Swift and a whole bunch of other cool people for a long time. And now have your own record label that you're building and putting out. We're going to talk a lot about that. But, and a lot of the music that you do is rave. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, dance music, EDM.
Okay.
I mean, there's a million different terms, but raves are parties we throw. And I mean, when I started going to them when I was 16, so.
So I love that because most people probably wouldn't look at me and go, that's a guy that likes to get into rave.
Bro, you're going to come to one. I'm going to make it happen.
Music. No, listen.
You and your dad are going to come.
My dad won't.
I don't know. We got him dance. I'm convinced.
He won't. My dad, he won't. He won't. He's in this area, he's all talk, no walk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I could get down at a rave.
Okay, let's do it.
And I mean, you honestly don't catch me as the rave guy. Do you know what I mean? If I saw you walking down the road, I'd be like, that guy could probably throw a fishing rod around. That guy probably knows. That guy knows how to handle a guitar, maybe a banjo. You know what I mean?
Man, I got to really work on my style.
But the DJ, dude, I'm just stereotyping. You know what I mean? But it's so cool. I have a friend of mine that I want to introduce you to. I know right away. His name is Brant Kreider.
Yeah, so, I know Brant.
You do?
Yeah, a little bit.
Have you guys hung out?
Not in person. No, we've texted a bit.
Bro.
Been on a few calls, and then he connected me with Brandon Lake, and because Brandon's a closet massive dance music fan. Okay. We've done some stuff together.
So you and Brandon are connected.
Yeah, he's really hard to stay connected with, though.
Yeah.
He's a busy dude.
I can help you with that.
Yeah.
So anyways, I love Brant, and he's into the rave scene.
Yes.
And so he was one of the first that I connected with a long time ago, where he started talking about his heart for the industry and rave and bringing God in. And I was like, wow, I mean, I like music. Yeah. I like country music, and I like rave music.
Let's go.
I'm down, dude. Let's do it. And you know who else likes rave music? My kids.
Yeah.
You put on something with a beat, dude, those white kids know how to dance. Because what happens when you're white and you grow up, and we're not supposed to talk like this, is you just get more embarrassed. You get so embarrassed that you don't want to move. My kids can dance.
That's good.
Yeah, 2 and 4.
That's great.
No problems.
I love it.
Dude, take us through where did you grow up?
Okay.
And then I want to know, of course, how you got into your love for music, and then especially dance music, rave music.
Yeah.
And how are you not fried out of your brain on acid and all those things that mostly probably our age, it would be alcohol and hard alcohol and ecstasy and speed.
Ecstasy was huge growing up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, so I grew up in Indiana. A little suburb of Indianapolis called Zionsville.
Yeah.
And I was born in Phoenix, but we moved to Indianapolis when I was 1. And so I grew up there and then went to college. And then
what college you go to?
A place called DePaul University.
Okay.
It's a small private liberal arts school in the Midwest. And and then after that, moved to Chicago and lived in Chicago for about 7 years.
And you're in your adult years?
Right after college.
Okay.
Yeah. And then from there, moved to England for 2, then Amsterdam for 5, and then good old Redding, California.
Amsterdam's a crazy place.
You know what? When you live there, it is so chill.
Oh, really?
If you go there as a tourist and you the tourist things are wild.
Yeah.
But if you live there, it's actually so chill.
Okay.
Which is like, it's this funny
Yeah.
like duality that exists of people experience the city one way when they come as a tourist, but when you live there, you just don't go to the tourist areas. And it's this beautiful, calm, like beautiful architecture, all that stuff. So it was very different living there than going as a tourist.
Did you grow up in a Christian home with like, what was your upbringing like?
We went to church.
Okay.
My parents,
You checked
Christians.
the box.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I want to be kind when I say this, but
Mom might
it,
watch this podcast.
no, I mean, I've shared this many times,
Yeah.
and my parents are actually in town, so like it's not a big
She's
deal.
outside.
Yeah,
Mom's
yeah,
outside.
she's gonna walk in here. Went to church, but where I grew up, like everybody went to church.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I do think people genuinely cared about Jesus.
Yeah.
And believed this is really good and this is the right thing to do and all that stuff. The Holy Spirit was never really a part of the conversation. And so it's interesting going back now and being like, oh, you guys really have a heart for the Lord.
Yeah.
But like the juice that makes it all go, you guys haven't experienced that yet. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, we grew up, I guess we'd call it a Christian home. We, went to church and we'd pray and all those things. And my mom would listen to, Michael W. Smith and Amy Grant and Newsboys. And then my dad was listening to like rock and roll.
Have you remixed any of Michael W. Smith or Amy Grant?
No, I haven't. But, I mean, friends are friends forever. It's like, will forever be embedded into my mind.
If you really want to go big, you have to remix Carmen.
So was like, I see somebody, do you know Brian Cosby? Because he was telling me about Carmen. And I was like, I have no idea who this is.
Bro.
So this is also the funny thing, especially with where things are at now, career-wise, is like, I didn't grow up like listening to worship music.
Yeah.
And like I was listening to the radio. I was listening to, my dad's, Led Zeppelin and the Eagles and
classic rock. That's
stuff like that.
That's a beautiful foundation in music.
And so I people tell me like, so I just did a song Rave Jesus did a song with Martin Smith a couple of weeks ago that came out. And like everybody I talked to is like, oh my gosh, like he is the Godfather. Yeah. And I'm like, I didn't know who he was 2.5 months ago. And so like, that's just like and so it's funny that now the Lord's kind of brought us and me into the Christian space because I didn't grow up with any of this stuff. So I feel like I'm meeting everyone for the first time and just like, oh, cool. Like, do I like who you are? Great. Let's do something. There's no history or anything. Yeah. But so, yeah, it was, growing up, it was a lovely home. Parents were awesome. They let us, be who we were as far as they didn't, I was super passionate about music and I mean, we all played sports, very passionate about sports, but then I loved DJing. They got my first pair of turntables for my 15th birthday and Christmas combined. And from there, it was just game on with that. But they would just let me blast the music so loud. And they were like, you love it. Keep going. So my dad's a doctor. My mom's a nurse. Like, it's not like music was like the focal point in our household.
How did you get into like music and getting a set of turntables? Because lots of kids are into music and they don't go get turntables. What happened?
Yeah. I mean, so for middle school, 7th, 8th grade, we moved back to Arizona for a couple years. And when I was there, I fell in love with like underground hip hop music.
Oh yeah.
It's like Jurassic 5, Tribe Called Quest, The Beat Nuts. And on all those records back then, hip hop back then is very different than today, but there'd always be a DJ who was cutting up records and scratching in the background. And I was like, I don't want to be a rapper. I want to be that guy. I always loved the beat and the production way more than whatever they were rapping about. And so did some research, like, oh, these are DJs doing this. And then, asked my parents, like, hey, I love this. Can we combine my birthday and Christmas for one present? And they did it. And that was that.
Bro, it's so crazy because what kids don't understand today that was before the day of like YouTube where you can go on and be like, okay, how do I lay down a cool beat? Mm-hmm. Or what's the 5 ways that I can dive into becoming a DJ? Like there wasn't any of that. Like who are the guys that you looked up to and how did you learn?
So a year after getting turntables, I heard trance music for the first time, which is a form of dance music. And
it's called what?
Trance.
Trance music.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I heard this record by Armin van Buuren called Communication. And this synth comes in and it was like time stood still for a second, and this part of me that I didn't know existed like came alive, and I was like, whatever this is, that's what I have to do musically.
Wow.
And from then on, it was buying dance music records instead of hip hop records, and Napster and LimeWire was huge at the time.
Oh, yeah.
So I would just type in like trance, dance, techno, European, whatever, like, and you just download everything. And so back then it was Tiesto, Paul Oakenfold, Ferry Corsten, Paul Van Dyke, and I would just listen to these sets over and over again. Then, you know, you had to buy actual vinyl records as a DJ. And so I'd go online, I'd buy records, and so
was it like,
YouTube didn't come out until I think it was like 2006, 7.
Yeah.
So like I was 8 years into DJing at that point. And so for you to learn, you had to go on these online forums and just read people describing stuff, or you had to buy VHS videos and have them shipped to your house. Like, it was, kids have it easy right now, and like in a great way. Like, it's awesome.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's wild that like it took what they can learn in 2 days took like 4 months for us to do.
Yeah, it's true. I think in some ways, like, it definitely separates the passionate from the posers. You know, like a guy who's really not going to do anything with it. Like, those were the years where, if you wanted to know something, you had to grind.
Yeah.
You had to learn.
It's like coming to Reading, man.
Yeah, no one comes to Reading on accident.
Unless you really want to be here.
Yeah, no one comes to Reading on accident. Yeah. Oh, here I am. Denver, Colorado. Yeah, probably you could just end up there, but not Reading. So while you're like putting DJing and all that stuff, like how did you get into like not just the party scene, but like how did you get into like actually putting together music in? Was it like mixtapes back then? Is that what you were recording?
No, I mean, you know, so there was a very vivid conversation I had one day in college, walking home from class, where I was like, I either need to go all in on this and start producing music, because if you ever want to tour the world, you have to make the music that people are interested in to then do it. Or like, let's just say this was really fun, hang it up for now and just focus on something else. And I was like, no, I love this too much. I want to go after this. And so started producing music, and pretty early on, I did this bootleg remix of Snow Patrol's Chasing Cars.
Oh, no way.
And it exploded and was one of the biggest.
Did you put it on YouTube? Is that?
No, this was before YouTube. So like, this was 2006.
So where'd you put it?
So the way that dance music used to work, and still kind of works too, is like, if other DJs start playing your record, then everybody starts hearing it, because like there's thousands of people at their shows. And so all of the biggest DJs started playing this record every show.
And you how did you distribute the recording?
I mean, you email it to people. You give them a CD at a show. Got it. You know, yeah. And
so
then,
you recorded
a
CD of that remix.
Yes, we made. So we made the remix. You bounce it as MP3 or WAV file, and then you burn it to a CD. Yeah, and then you hand it to somebody at a show. So this is how it used to work. Is like, I would drive up, before I was living in Chicago and I was in college. I would drive up like to Chicago on a Friday, like, go to the show, like hand whoever the huge DJ was, hey, these are my songs, check them out. And then maybe they email you, say, oh, I checked out, these are amazing, thank you, or you never hear from them, whatever. And so, it was different than nowadays, where you can just slide into someone's DM, like, yo, check this out. And I mean, I'm really grateful, because it puts a different level of work ethic and perseverance that you don't have to have right now. But that was it, is you just had to hustle and show up. And then as soon as like kind of one person starts playing it, then everyone's like, oh, what's that? I need that. And then it starts to get spread around. And it literally, it got so big that I was at a festival, backstage at a festival in Chicago, and Tiesto was the biggest DJ in the world at the time. And the act that was playing before him was called Deep Dish. Their managers were fighting over who was going to play the record at the festival.
No way.
I'm not even kidding. I was standing right there being like, this is the craziest moment of my life. Like, my heroes are fighting over this version of a song. And Deep Dish's manager was like, well, we're playing before you, so if we want to play it, we're going to play it. And they did. And so, like, but that's what it was, is like, people would, and then all of a sudden people hear it and they start talking about it, and this buzz starts to build. And from that opened up to, then Tiesto's like, hey, send me your original music, I want to sign it. And so then after that, I signed like 13 records in a row to his record label. He asked me to come do some shows with him. And then at that point, you're like, okay, maybe there's something here. This isn't just
after 13
hobby.
records, you're like, maybe there's something here.
No, I think after the Chasing Cars remix exploding, I go, maybe I have like a knack for this thing.
Yeah.
And then when Tiesto in person invites you to, I want you to come and play these shows with me. And then after, we played the shows, he called me like a week later. I was like, bro, thank you so much. You were incredible. And you're like, what is going on? I was still in college. And then you're like, all right, maybe I need to really, really give this a shot.
What did that look like? So when you decided to go on, which obviously you did, like, what did that mean for you?
Well, after college, I went on staff with Young Life for a couple years.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And that
awesome.
allowed me the freedom to still do music because I wasn't the head person in our region. And, so I was able to kind of do, 15, 20, 25 hours with Young Life. And then I would just sit in the studio for 10 hours a day outside of that.
Oh my gosh.
Making music and then still connecting, going to Chicago, going to Detroit. And then in 2010, moved to England for about 8 months, worked on a bunch of music, signed a record deal after that. And then it was one of the records did really well. And Skrillex signed one when he was popping off. And then it was like touring all over America. And
were you going with him?
Not with him personally, no. But once you had the Skrillex stamp of approval, it was like the golden ticket to. I played just off one song alone that he signed. Played 85 shows in North America in 1 year just from that.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
What's that like when you go on the road? Is it exhausting or is it exhilarating? Like
it's both.
Yeah,
it's different because I didn't know the Holy Spirit at that time in my life. Still love Jesus.
Yeah,
making healthy, wise decisions.
Yeah.
Wasn't partying, wasn't doing drugs, wasn't hooked up with girls. But I didn't know the Holy Spirit. So it was more of I'm doing this for God.
Yeah.
And I just was like, I love this. This is fun. And, the flying is exhausting.
Yeah.
There was a section of that was on a tour bus and I was like, this is the best thing ever. You fall asleep and you wake up in the new city and you get to hang out all day. Like, I love this. But yeah, it was interesting just being, in my 20s and you're flying around the world playing shows and just kind of like living your dream a bit. And you're like, oh, this is not nearly as sexy as you imagine it being.
Bro, when I remember when I was probably like 18, my dad had moved to Bethel Church and actually probably 20. Dad had come to Bethel Church and just started to kind of gain a little bit of traction and started to travel some, right? People would fly him out to Colorado or, South Carolina, and he started to preach out these churches and stuff. And that was like a big deal, right? Flying and preaching. And we're all kind of like, how do you get on that train,
Yeah.
And, he'd talk a lot about just the experience and the hotels and the airplane. And about 10 years into that, you start watching and you're like, dude, I don't know.
Yeah.
That life is rough. Somebody owns your time. You're not eating what you want to eat.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's one of the biggest things is when you start traveling.
Yeah.
Like your diet, just your
community,
eating like airport food, like you're alone in a hotel a lot.
This is true.
It was weird. I think the biggest thing that took a minute to get used to was like you would go play these shows in front of 500,000, 2,000 people, like the craziest sound system, lights, lasers, like it is unbelievably cool. Everyone's going crazy. And then 10 minutes later, like you're sitting in your hotel room by yourself and you can't fall asleep because you're jacked up on adrenaline.
That's true.
And you're like, what do I do at like 2 a.m. in in Santa Fe?
Well, the stereotypical DJ would be at the after party.
Right. Well, this is where I wasn't doing. I definitely go to some after parties. Just like, well, I'm not going to fall asleep right now. And like, let's go hang out with the music and let's just, see if there's people to meet and chat with and, encourage and whatnot. But
so were most of the raves and stuff that you were doing, were they Christian or were
none
they
of
just,
them?
Okay.
None.
So how did that go over?
Christians and after parties, bro.
They're wild. I do know Christians and after parties. That's the problem.
Okay. Well, okay.
Yeah. And you wonder, are they really Christians? And why are they out the after party? Yeah. No, how did that work for you? Because honestly, like that's a tough world. That's That's a world where, and I can even say like fame and notoriety, even 500, 1,000, 2,000, it's not 50,000, but it's people who love you, who are there, would do anything for you, who don't, don't have great morals and values. Like obviously there's tons of offers for everything that you want.
Yeah, everything's available.
And a lot of peer pressure, like you're exhausted, you're on the road, you're alone. How did you manage all that? And did you manage it all well?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like, I can clearly say I never made poor choices.
That's amazing.
And I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to explain it other than like none of that stuff has ever been an issue for me.
It just wasn't tempting.
No, like I never struggled with porn, never struggled with alcohol, never struggled with any of that stuff. I mean, I stopped drinking when I went to college.
Yeah.
I just didn't like it. And then I think that was the Lord being really kind, being like, hey, you're going to start going into places where it's just easier if you don't. And then one of the cool things was if you didn't drink, people were just like, hey, I respect that. Like, cool.
Yeah.
And they didn't bother you. But if you drank, everyone wanted to take shots, do all these things. And so just when it wasn't an option, people were like, oh, cool. And so, I mean, yeah, but I never, it's just never been an issue for me. And I think that's just a grace that the Lord's kind of had on my life where he knows, hey, this is where I'm going to put you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make sure this is not a problem. And in some ways, this is someone's going to get really triggered by this, but like in a lot of ways, I feel way closer to the Lord in those environments I do at church because it requires you to be sharp. It requires you to rely on him and be like, hey, what are you doing in the midst of all this?
Yeah.
Where are you? Like, help me see the gold in these people despite the choices that are being made. And that requires a lot of intimacy with him where like you can show up to church, kind of float on by, and so I kind of love like being in those places. I'm like, oh, this is what I was built for. And yeah, I'm really grateful that it just hasn't been a problem. And, I think you also make it as you yourself can either make it really difficult to make bad decisions or make it really easy to make bad decisions.
True. I agree.
And I don't think people really want to own that responsibility, but it's a big part of it. Like you can make it really easy to make bad decisions and be like, oh, I was just, or you can make it really difficult to do it. And I made sure I made it very difficult to do it.
It's a good word. Growing up, of course I had loving parents and, like alcohol wasn't something that was in smoking and wasn't something that was modeled in my home. So I wasn't familiar with it. And then I just remember like pornography was a big struggle for me growing up. And it was such a struggle for me, masturbation and pornography. So I found masturbation at 10 years old and was completely addicted until 16 years old and found pornography at 14 years old. And so that was a struggle, masturbation and pornography, for 2 years. And I worked so hard, getting help from my family and to overcome that addiction that once I overcame that, I was like, man, I don't ever want to struggle with addiction again. Like it's hell.
Yeah.
And so even to this day, like alcohol, smoking, I have a lot of friends, even my wife would have a glass of wine, no problem. I always say like, I never want to have to acquire a taste for something. If I have to acquire a taste for something, I'm forcing myself to like something that I don't like. And then I have to put all this effort and energy into managing something that I don't want to have to manage, right? Like what's the consequence of not managing this well? Well, the consequence of not managing steak well is not a big deal. The consequence of not managing alcohol well or tobacco is a really big deal. And so for me, I think a lot of the common denominator that I see is when the alcohol and the smoking and tobacco use, for a lot of people who grew up in homes where there was a lot of pain induced, man, they find alcohol and drugs young as a way to mask the pain. But it's kind of a testimony, like if you, it really is like, it's a testimony, like raising your kids with love and care and concern really takes away that massive drive, that pull it can to heavy, addictive use. Yeah. And so that's really cool, man, that you were able to walk that line. And you do, I think, I imagine that what I experienced in my life is like in high school, I wore a purity ring And actually I wore a white shirt every single day. And my sophomore year of high school, because that's part of the way I was so addicted to pornography and masturbation that I had this realization after telling my sisters and my mom that I was struggling. My dad was there already. He already knew I was struggling. And they prayed over me. I remember feeling really clean. And I remember thinking to myself, I never want to feel any different than this.
Yeah.
And then I had this realization, I have to remind myself every day, because I realized like, I can't, there's no way I can stop this. So once I had gotten clean and fully out and the shame was gone, I just thought there has to be a way that I remind myself every day what I'm fighting for.
Yeah.
And so I told my mom to buy a bunch of white shirts, and I literally wore white t-shirts for a year, every single day. And at first, you know, your friends are like, my friends, I grew up in Weaverville. They didn't notice for like a week. And then literally they're like, was your mom shopping at Walmart? Like, what's wrong with you?
Do you guys do laundry? What's going on?
And I had made a decision that like, if people ask, I'm just going to tell them. Like,
wow, that's bold.
I didn't really care to be an evangelist for it. I'm not like much of an evangelist. I just thought like, I don't want to be so scared of my story. And I had a dad that used to tell me like, anything that you overcome, you can give away. It's a weapon. So I always have this thing like, for BraveCo, like we weaponize our stories. Those places where that was hell, the place that held you down, like you overcome that. Yeah. Now you can fight with that thing. Yeah. And so he really instilled that into me. And I remember telling a bunch of friends, acquaintances in high school, they'd be like, bro, what's that ring? And why do you wear white shirts all the time? And I was like, oh yeah, I was so addicted to pornography. And I just remind myself every day of who I am. And I've made a promise to myself that I'm not going to have sex before marriage. And I cannot tell you how many of the coolest kids in school would go
blown away by that.
I wish I'd have done that.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that you don't get some of the same thing being in that scene of people going like, man, I really respect that. You have validity in a different way than even if you partook a little bit and managed it. When somebody goes like, yeah, this is not how I run my life. Yeah. It makes a big difference. That's cool.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what made you leave the label that you were on. Yeah. And like go this direction.
Well, are you talking about Republic Records? Yeah. So it was, I mean, they are a record label where it's a go big or go home type thing. Yeah. I mean, because they have the biggest stars in the world. I mean, Drake, Post Malone, Taylor Swift, Nicki Minaj, over the weekend. Like, I mean, it's just like, it's insane, the numbers and the things. And I mean, I remember, we'd have these, meetings with the marketing people and the product team and all this stuff. And they're the same people who are doing like Ariana Grande's like latest album. And you're like, what is going on here? Like, and it was amazing because these people are brilliant. And you're like, okay, let's try this with my music. And then if it doesn't hit, you're like, is it, maybe it's just my music isn't right for this. And it wasn't. Yeah. And I think, and the reality is the way that things work at labels like that is if there's momentum, they will put as much gasoline on it to get every single ounce of it out of it that they can. But if it doesn't hit a certain thing on its own, it's like, okay, on to the next thing. And at that time, the records did well, but not well enough where they're going to take their time away from these superstars to put in an effort on this. And it just didn't work. And that's okay. Like I have no animosity towards them, like an incredible learning experience that I get to use to my advantage now with running my own label and all these things. And, I also think, I mean, the reality is at that point, my wife and I have been married for a year. And we got married at the beginning of 2017. I signed the deal at the beginning of 2018. Yep. And 2017, I mean, I've got shows all over the world. We just basically had a year-long honeymoon. Wow. We were living in Europe and in China and Australia, shows all over the place, making great money. Everything's awesome for the first year of marriage. And we ended up landing in Amsterdam as far as like, this is where we want to be based for now. She got a job with Nike and signed this deal. And I'm like, I think we should be spending more time in LA. And she's like, I don't. And we had a lot of tension because I'm like, well, this isn't like a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, yeah, that's fine. But like, I don't think we're supposed to be in LA. And we had a lot of, like, if the reality is if that record deal would have gone well, as far as like created a bunch of momentum and money, it'd probably come at a heavy cost for our marriage.
With your marriage.
Yeah. And so in a lot of ways, maybe the kindness of the Lord to be like, yeah, that's cool, but your marriage is cooler. So let's protect
Was that
that.
tough for you?
I mean, it was, part of it also is like, when you're single, you can just go wherever the momentum is and like you're fine.
Yeah.
So this was the first time in my life where I'm like, wait a minute, I don't get to just do that. And so there's that part of just life as being a married person. And then there's the, at that point, maybe a little bit of like a scarcity mindset of like, well, this might be the only shot like this that I ever get.
Yeah.
And which, because, that's what you hear all the time in the music industry.
It's real, dude.
And maybe it's true.
Yeah.
And so you sit there going, well, I want to give this every single ounce of possibility that I can. And at some point you just have to swallow it and be like, well, am I choosing marriage or am I going to choose this? And, it was marriage.
How was that for you? Like,
2018 was hell for both of us.
It was.
Oh yeah. We were, and we're very open about this.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, in some ways, like it's impressive we stuck through it because we just did not see eye to eye on a lot of things.
How'd you solve that?
There's a guy named Danny Martinez out here that we would do some counseling with. We got connected with him.
I know him very well.
Yeah. And he was an absolute godsend. And part of it is you just have to learn how to just persevere through hard seasons.
Yeah.
And still be like, okay, well, like, are we going to choose each other in the midst of all of this or not? And you find out what you're made of.
Well, that is life, right? It's one big reveal.
Yeah.
It's revealing.
Who am I really? What do I really believe in?
Yeah.
I can say all this stuff, but like push comes to shove, like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And it was, and weirdly, like COVID was the best thing ever for us.
Oh, no way.
Oh my gosh.
Because you're home.
Yeah. And like, we hit it, and there's no pressure of, she's working for Nike in the European headquarters
online
and having to travel in and out of work, and I'm not traveling anywhere. And we just had a blast.
Wow.
And so like 2019 was good. 2020 was like, this is the greatest thing ever. And I mean, COVID sucked. I'm not even gonna get into that, but for our marriage, like, best thing ever.
See, I could say the same thing. 2019 was one of the best years of my life. In 2019, my wife and I finally got pregnant. Again, I have 3 older kids, and that came from my previous marriage. And then Lauren and I had been trying to get pregnant for 8 years.
Wow.
We finally did IVF in 2019. I was like, I'm turning 40 years old. Like we either solve this problem or I don't want to have more kids. So 2019, we do IVF. She gets pregnant. And 2020, March 5th, we have our baby Edie, and we come out of the hospital, and literally that week, I'm home 1 week and COVID hits. Boom. And I was like, holy cow. I literally stayed home for a whole year. I almost didn't do anything, right? Like the world was just figuring out Zoom, and we're figuring out, what are you going to do for church? And it's like, I don't know, but I get to stay home with my wife for a year. And so, I mean, for me too, it was like this, obviously the COVID part was like in the politics and was crazy. I turned off the news. I still haven't turned it on because why?
Smart.
Yeah. Why?
It's an election year too. So just stay that way.
Yeah. We all know it's going to happen, right? Yeah. But yeah, just such a bonding year of growing a baby together. And what year did you guys get pregnant? Because I know you have a 3-year-old.
2020. We found out we were actually in Reading Thanksgiving morning.
Wow.
She was like, I'm late enough, but we should check. We went and we bought a pregnancy test at the Walgreens off Cypress and found out that morning.
Were you guys trying?
It was first attempt at trying. I'm like, let's actually try and get pregnant. Bam.
Wow.
Conceived in Reading, found out in Reading, born in Amsterdam.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, he was born in Amsterdam. We were living over there at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yep.
That's crazy. So for you, like, what's next? What's on your, like, this is where I'm going. This is the bucket list. This is what's happening in my life.
I mean, things have changed as far as kind of career direction. Well, not career direction, but just positioning of things. And so, I'll take it back a little bit. In 2018, when I had that deal with Republic, I'm having these meetings with these people, being like, these guys are brilliant, unbelievable people, but they just don't know the Lord. Like, what would it look like for these types of minds to know who they are and partner with the Holy Spirit to come up with ideas and strategies? And so I just had this huge heart for people and started this call called Rave Jesus, where we'd get together every week and just pray for the industry, ask God's heart for what he wants to do. I just pray for people and just bless the industry. And that went on. And then in 2020, we opened it up to everybody. And it kind of exploded during COVID, and people were hopping on from all over the industry. And then last year, the Lord at the beginning of the year goes,
did you guys keep it going for 3 years?
Yeah, we kept it going.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It's once a week?
Yeah, we paused it for a minute.
Yeah.
It's been paused for, and it's been paused for a second because there's been a slight, which I'll get to, this like positioning of things. And so at the beginning of last year, I was just having time with the Lord, and he was like, hey, you're going to start playing shows that are parallel to the industry. It's going to become a movement, and then it's going to get invited back in the industry. And I'm like, okay, I have no idea what that is. Like, whatever you say, I'm going to just keep going with whatever we have in front of us. And I'm like open to whatever you want to do, but I have no clue what this is. And had a show in Seattle, I think it was the first weekend of June, and was like, I want to do a DJ-led worship night the next night at the same venue. I've never done one of these, but felt this was a good idea. So we did the normal show, and the next night do the DJ-led worship night, and I'm flying home from Seattle the next day, and I'm like, why was the DJ-led worship night like so crazy and so much better than the normal club night?
Wow.
And I was just being like, this is weird. And I am someone who unashamedly talks about my frustration with Christian music.
Sure.
And how I don't love it. With the creativity wise, sonically, I'm like, guys, like there's so much more available. Like, why is it still always like this?
Yeah.
And so here and I've never had a heart to like do things toward the church. I'm always like, let's go to the darkest places
Totally.
and love those people and have them encounter Jesus in the middle of the dance
Maybe the
floor.
darkest places are in the church.
I mean, we can talk about that. So I'm flying home, and I'm like, this is so weird. And the Lord was like, do a few more of these. I'm like, all right. Call my buddy who runs a church down in LA. Tommy Martinson runs Evergreen Church down there. And I was like, this just happened in Seattle. I feel like LA has got to be the next place, because if it can work in LA, there's maybe legs on this thing.
Yeah.
If it can't work there, like, then this is definitely not a great idea. We just
have to take it to rural places.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, yeah. And he was like, awesome, let's do it. So we booked this warehouse in downtown LA, put tickets up. 8 hours later, all tickets are gone.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. And the Lord was like, this is the parallel to the industry thing I was talking about. And he's like, and he said before, like, you have to brand this as a Rave Jesus event, because the heart of your call it's the same heart, but now it's just a show.
So, okay. In that show, it's like rave worship music. Is that what you said? Rave worship music?
Yeah. I mean, so these are like worship raves, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, like, just to give somebody an example of what that would be, are you taking like Hosanna in the Highest and like adding beats to it?
I mean, we flipped a couple records, like old hymns and things like that.
Yeah.
Gospel music and house music have always been very closely linked. So a lot of stuff like that. But, we wrote a ton of original music where we just sit in the room and be like, all right, Lord.
Is somebody leading that? Like, are you, because like sorry, having not been in there at all, I'm just trying to paint a picture. Like, are people coming in and you're in like a worship type moment? Or is it like a DJ type moment, like what I would think
I'm DJing. It's basically like, imagine going to a club.
Yep.
And every record that's being played has the heart of the Father in it.
Yeah.
And it could be a worship song that's flipped into a dance record that you might have heard of, or it's an original record that is, basically worship house music, but people just haven't heard it yet because it's new.
That's cool.
And that's what the music is.
Yeah.
And what I think is special for us, is the level of excellence that we have is that of the actual music industry. Cause like, it's like, if you're not here, like no one cares.
Yeah.
But then when you actually partner and put the heart of the Father with it, Like it's we've never I've never seen music like this before.
So like a lot of times in worship, like what makes worship incredible is when they find something, right?
Mhm.
Like when you go from singing whatever, a Carrie Job song, and then all of a sudden like you hit what the Spirit's doing in
Yeah.
the song, and then they're able to like build and expand upon that. Like, is that what you're doing? Are you able to like build and expand, or are you playing tracks, and how does that work for you?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a normal DJ set. You know, these records are all like finished, and I'm mixing and choosing what to play next. But you know, one of the things that I think in dance music that's a little bit different than maybe leading worship is when you're in the studio, you are creating, always thinking about how does this translate to the club? What is going to happen in the room when this moment happens, or we do this or that? And I think me personally, like one of my greatest skill sets is knowing in the room while creating what this is going to do
like
on the dance floor. Yeah, I mean, we're composing all the music, we're making it, we're writing all of it. It's all original stuff. But one of my superpowers in the studio, because I'm not like an amazing actual player of music, or I can't sing at all, but I do have this gift of this has that thing to it that in the room, this is what's going to happen.
That's awesome.
And like prophetically being able to see it. And so then while we're creating it, and then you go play these records and you're like, there it is.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Bro, I love that. Yeah, that's really
so like
awesome.
Kevin, who I produce all the Rave Jesus music with, he's a genius producer, and it's so fun because, you know, he's got this amazing skill set over here. Son, who sings on a lot of the records, like amazing songwriter, unbelievable voice. Son and I do a lot of the songwriting together, and then I'm kind of leading from this prophetic space, like what I'm kind of seeing and hearing in my head of like, I think we should adjust like this, and all of our skill sets come together in a way where like it works so well. And you hear the music and you're like, whoa, this is like, I don't know if I'll ever release like another single record by myself, because I'm just like, I don't know if I can't compare to this stuff that we're doing.
Why would you if you can't? Reach that
and so now this is what Rave Jesus has become. It's become, so after the show in LA, put some stuff up online, a whole tour in the fall, and then more and more people are reaching out, and then, you know, record labels start reaching out, all this stuff, and we've written a ton of music, and we opted not to go to, you know, sign with anybody else and keep it all independent, and, you know, been able to build a whole team that way. And we start putting out all the music here really soon. I mean, we got a huge record coming out tomorrow.
Wow.
And we did the song with Martin Smith a couple weeks ago, and the one tomorrow is the first one of all the stuff we started making. That was like the beginning of all the Rave Jesus music. So it's really cool that we get to start sharing that stuff.
Yeah. I love that, man.
Yeah.
How exciting. Well, by the time people will listen to this, you'll have already released this stuff. And so, where's the best place that they can find it?
I mean, you can go to Spotify or Apple Music, anywhere you can find music. Type in Rave Jesus, You're Gonna Be Okay. That's this song that's coming out. And then, you know, all of our social media stuff, Rave Jesus Music on Instagram. Our YouTube page is popping off, so go find us on YouTube. And there's lots of shows and videos and everything. And it's wild just seeing God take dance music and reach a generation that isn't really in love with church.
Honestly, I really am so excited about it. And not just saying that, like, I think that we have to reach society in so many different forms and avenues. And I do think that, we're so prone as believers to go, this is the way, this is the box, you know, this is what God likes. And leave everything else, all the rest of the creativity up to the world, to go and take all the space. And so it's
and then they like, why is it so evil and dark over there? You're like, well, you ignored it for 25 years. What did you expect to have happen?
So cool. Yeah, it's true. And the other side to it, I think, is when we get to experience, I think anything on a excellent professional level, like it just shows another facet of who God is. And I love that, man. It's really cool. I really would love to go to a rave, and I'd love to jump in and see what you guys are doing.
You have to come.
And even more than that, I'm putting it on the record. Like, I'd love to figure out what it looks like to do a men's event with a rave in it. And ever since I've known Brant, I've thought about it a lot, because it's not just for the sake of doing something different. I actually think that there's stuff that's released inside people when you get out of the box, and or things are a catalyst. So I'll give you an example. Like, we did last year at our BraveCo conference, we did the haka at the last session. And 2 seconds before you do the haka, guys don't know that they want to go to war and express themselves, and that there's this lion inside of you, right? And that, wow, like, this is a side that God's created us to be, and it's intense and it's powerful.
Yeah,
and
it's good.
Yeah, and I think even this year, we are at our BraveCo conference, which is June 12th through the 14th. I've been talking to the team, like, I want worship to look different this year. I don't, and I like traditional worship. I do. It's great. Like, I really enjoy it. I want to somehow get a little bit more outside of the box, so that it's not so predictable, and so that we can actually press in further into what God's doing, right? Because I experience God in different ways when I go beyond maybe even just what's normal. Maybe it doesn't even have to be scary.
Yeah.
Sometimes things are scary. And sometimes, like I shot a grizzly bear in 2018 in Alaska with my bow. And like, those are moments where you're like, wow, I experienced something that it pulled something out of me that I didn't see before, or becoming a new dad, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I'm connecting to God in a way that I didn't see that.
Yeah, I can relate to that part so much. You're like, whoa, this is
2000.
It's been there the whole time, but now it's crazy.
2018 for you, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I'm in the middle of a marriage that I'm having to work in a way that I didn't foresee, and God's going to show up. But I also think creatively, that the Lord also does those types of things in us and through us. And so I really have been thinking about how do we step into like more of the fullness of excellence and creativity in a way that pulls people in that guys would never be pulled in before. Because the other side to this is we're very tribal people, and most of culture has lost that, right? Where we actually come together as a community and make this sound and create this movement and embark in some ways into the spiritual aspect of it. When you go back to how human beings expressed and created for so long, it was so much about the tribe and the sound and the beat and the music. And so I really do think like, I really would love to continue to talk through like, what would it look like to put on something that we could partner with men that brought them to another place and pulled that out of them. Because I really think that there's something there, and men are in such a bad place right now. They really are.
It's crazy.
That I think what God
Did you see is it Harrison, the kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs?
Oh no.
Man, so he's a devout Catholic. Yeah. And he gave a commencement speech at a Catholic university. It's like Benedict College. Yeah. And he gave this speech, and he was just talking about like, men, like, you were called to be fathers. Women, you were called to be mothers. Yeah. And he like went in in the NFL, like, I love football. Yeah. I love football. When a dude beats up his wife or his girlfriend, you don't hear anything. When Deshaun Watson gets charged with sexual assault on like 65 masseuses, you don't hear anything. Well, they made a statement being like, we don't necessarily agree with him. And you're like, this is the thing that you like, that you're not going to like, really? Okay. Interesting. Like, but the fact that he just made those statements, being like, hey, your highest calling as a man is to be a father and a husband. Your highest calling as a wife is to be, or as a woman is to be a wife and a mother. Yeah. And the fact that like triggered so much, I just was like, wow, we really are like, and I think the majority of people would agree with it. I think media makes it, but the fact that like we're having this conversation of like, I mean, it's all over Twitter and Instagram. And I was like, is it, we really are in a place where like the most basic things that used to be normal are now like
It's
so crazy. And dudes are sitting here being like, I don't know what to do anymore. I'm told I'm evil if I'm too manly. I have to change my sex if I'm slightly feminine. It's wild.
We won't get off too far.
Yeah, we don't need to like go deep, but that was a moment where I was like, whoa,
I'm about to dive in. I'm about to pitch in.
Yeah.
I'm about to throw my some stuff in the hat here. Because this is my world and this is what I study a lot. There's 380,000 Christian churches in America. Okay. Christian churches.
I saw the church to Starbucks ratio. Have you seen this stat?
No.
Because everyone's like, oh, there's Starbucks everywhere. There's only like 16,000.
Yeah.
And then they were like, yeah, there's 400,000 churches. I was like, oh my gosh.
So there's 380,000 Christian churches in America. Of those 380,000 churches in America, less than 10% have a men's ministry. Of those 10% of churches that have a men's ministry, only 8% say that they're doing a good job discipling their men. That's Barna stats. That's not Walmart stats. That's Barna research. That's the best research that you can get on when it comes to churches. 380,000 churches in America. Of those churches, 10% have a men's ministry, right? Of those 10%, only 8% say they're doing a good job. So there's 3,000 churches around here in all of America that say, we're doing a pretty good job raising up men. What's the problem? The problem that we have is the guys who are supposed to be out there saving broken men are broken. When the church is broken, everything's broken.
Mm-hmm.
When men are broken, everything's broken. Because the call of a man is to protect, provide, and promote. And when you lose that, everything in society starts to go downhill.
Mm.
And so to me, like, again, going back to like, we have to capture men. We have to move the heart of a man in a way that the guys are tired of sitting and being preached to. The real problem, and I said we weren't going to go super far, but
Let's go as far as we need to.
The real problem is that what churches have tried to solve on a Sunday morning in men's retreats and in conferences can only be solved through discipleship. And when you take a man and you put him in church and you go, you need to be nice, right? You need to be kind. You need to be patient. And those things aren't bad in and of themselves, but that's not the fullness of how God's created us. In the same way that, worship, the fullness of how God created worship wasn't to play a guitar or a banjo or even rave music or house music.
Yeah.
That's not the end all.
Expression of it.
Yeah. And so to me, like, getting men back engaged with who God created them to be. And sometimes you need a rave to do that. And sometimes you need a soaking session to do that. And sometimes you need, but that's why I'm saying, like, we really do as men who are leading other men have to find out a way to activate, to get men back engaged with who God's created them to be, but also to get brave enough to freaking connect with your wife and her emotions and to be a father and to be a leader. And honestly, like, it takes everybody.
Yeah.
No one has it figured out. There's no one music company or men's ministry or preacher that's going to figure it out. But I really do think it's what God's doing. I said this the other day, like, when we look back at history, God has risen up, like a Martin Luther King Jr. or William Wilberforce, or, these men that have helped to lead movements. But I really think that what God's doing now is raising up a company of men. I really do. I think he's breaking the model. And I actually don't think that was the model that he was trying to do. I think when the corporate is unwilling to be brave enough to step out, it's like, he raises up the Gideons and guys who don't have anything to lose, who are willing to go and do it, But I really think it is up to our generation now, guys like you and me and these men who are listening to the podcast to go, okay, we have to, with courage, step out and do things with excellence in a way that pulls out both the lion and the lamb and gives men real tools and gives guys real courage to embrace who God's called them to be.
Yeah, it's good.
And if we don't do that, then who's going to?
Especially becoming a dad makes you think about, like, the next generation and legacy so much more, because what kind of world is he going to grow up in?
Wild.
And it's like, okay, well, what can I be doing today?
Yeah.
That in 15 years is going to make the world a better place for my son to grow up and be a boy, and a man. And something I think about a lot now, which growing up, I was like, oh, life's great. Everything's cool. Like, but it's a huge thing. And so I'm always, especially with even just, the music stuff and the guys on my record label, I'm like, as much as I want your music to be great and all that, like the most important thing is how can I help, walk alongside you to become the man, like the fullness of the man that you're, cause it's all dudes on the label right now.
Yeah. It's great.
That like, how can you be the man you were made to be in every area of your life, not just music? And then if they can come alive in that, like the creativity that's going to come out of it's going to be that much better. But it's
true.
like, these guys are going to be fathers and they're going to be husbands. And it's, I used to never think about legacy. And now I think about it all the time now.
Yeah. Well, you realize the joy and enjoyment of living a life that you're proud of. Right. And imagine if you would have compromised, I mean, even just like the over drinking or the girls, it's like, it complicates so much of your life, right?
Yeah.
Now you diminish because, I mean, just even mentally, your capacity is lower and you got all these problems with your wife because it's all the stuff in the past and the vices. And it's like every bondage that a man picks up trying to solve a problem creates more problems down the road and it diminishes his capacity. And now he's not capable. These young guys who are growing up under you and who are trying to express themselves and make a living and grow a brand and a business, like every piece of bondage that you grab along the way, it has a cause and effect. And the effect is it diminishes your capacity.
Yep.
It discredits your brand. It sucks from the life that you're supposed to be giving. And so, man, honestly, it only makes the most sense to come wholeheartedly to keep your affairs right, to watch what your mind's thinking, to watch how you eat and how much you exercise and how you're treating your family. And like, if you want to actually maximize your life, there's nothing smarter.
Yeah.
And what I love now is we're seeing like so many non-Christians even going like the drinking, the smoking, and I have tons of friends that smoke cigars. I don't have a problem with it. I'm just saying you're starting to see a movement now where guys are going, Jocko, I don't drink.
Yeah.
I don't have any need for that. Huberman, like, what am I going to drink for? Right.
Yeah.
You're starting to see all these guys going, listen, the drinking to connect and to be cool and to like the real flex is what you control, not what controls you.
Yeah. I do feel like in the midst of culture being so bizarre, there is a genuine movement of
That's real.
Like men being like, no, we are going to be men again. And you're seeing, I mean, you got Joe Rogan, maybe one of the most influential men on the planet right now. And he's all about just like masculinity.
Yeah.
And I mean, you got Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
And it's
Russell
just
Brand, all that.
I mean, like it's interesting, like, I mean, it's just interesting to see these guys who are like men being like, no, hey, they're really speaking into the next generation. So despite the fact that I look around and be like, what on earth is going on? I do see stuff where I'm actually really hopeful.
Yeah.
And the fact that so many people are listening to and being mentored by some like people like Jordan Peterson is like, oh, there's a hunger for this.
Yeah.
And so I am excited for the next generation, in a lot of ways. Man, it's wild out there,
it is.
Bro. We need dudes to be dudes.
Well, bro, I'm thankful for you. And I'm thankful that you're paving a way and that you're stepping out and continuing to pursue what God's put in your heart because it's so important. And the Rave Jesus is such a cool brand and also really impactful. So I really would encourage guys, take your wives, take your kids. Can kids go? I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, all the shows that we throw ourselves are all ages.
Awesome. Yeah. So go and check out his Instagram and his website and the YouTube page. And don't just like get on his YouTube page, but like subscribe and leave comments and hang out there and help grow. It's one way that's free that you can help grow a movement and sew in and even support their ministry, right? Is like you can help them fund what they're doing for free.
Yeah.
Just by doing that kind of stuff.
That's so true.
Topher, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this. It's been cool.
Yeah. BraveCo guys, we will see you next week on the BraveCo podcast. Hey, BraveCo men. Hopefully you loved this week's episode. Listen, if you have not subscribed to our podcast, you are already behind. Go ahead and click right here to subscribe to our podcast. And if you have not watched last week's episode, you can click right here and watch last week's episode. And listen, if you want to upgrade your wardrobe, you can check out some of our new hats that we have in stock and all our other swag. Go to braveco.org and you can look at our store there. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.